The Supreme Court just dropped a unanimous 9-0 ruling that directly affects when police can legally enter your home without a warrant. Most people have no idea what it means for their Fourth Amendment rights. If you want to stay ahead of decisions that affect your rights, like subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown like this. Background of the case. This case began when police received a report that Trevor Cassis had made threatening statements to his ex-girlfriend, suggesting he might harm himself and would harm officers if they arrived. When police showed up, they observed an empty gun holster, received no response from inside, shone flashlights through windows, and called his name, all unanswered. After waiting over 40 minutes, they entered through an unlocked front door, even though some officers said they did not believe anything was wrong inside. Once inside, officers found Cassis hiding in a closet. When he emerged, he was shot by an officer. A handgun was discovered in a bedroom, and Cassis was charged with multiple criminal violations. He challenged the warrantless entry as a violation of his Fourth Amendment rights. The Montana Supreme Court upheld the entry using a reasonable suspicion framework, and Cassis petitioned the United States Supreme Court. The central question became what legal standard governs emergency warrantless entries into a home, a question without a clear national answer for too long. What made this case significant is that officers who doubted anything was wrong still entered, creating the constitutional gray area that demanded a definitive ruling. This wasn't simply about one man and one incident. It forced the legal system to confront a question producing inconsistent outcomes across every state for years. Constitutional law is never abstract. It is always personal. The human facts here made that impossible to ignore. Key legal questions before the court. The central issue was what standard governs emergency warrantless entries, not whether police can ever enter in an emergency, but what threshold they must meet before that exception applies. The court chose between three frameworks: probable cause, the highest standard; reasonable suspicion, the lower bar Montana used; objectively reasonable belief. The standard from Brigham City versus Stewart lower courts had been drawing that line in different places for years. This wasn't just a legal problem. It was a constitutional crisis affecting every American regardless of where they lived. The stakes were enormous. Too low a bar, and Fourth Amendment protection becomes meaningless. Too high a bar risks leaving endangered people without intervention. When seconds determine life or death, the court had to decide the constitutional boundary between government power and a citizen's right to be left alone. That boundary is one of the most consequential lines in law. Choosing incorrectly wouldn't just affect this case, it would determine whether millions of Americans enjoy full constitutional protection or see it weakened every time police label something an emergency. Details of the High Court's ruling. The Supreme Court issued a unanimous 9-0 decision holding that police may enter a home without a warrant only if they have an objectively reasonable basis to believe someone inside is seriously injured or imminently threatened with such injury. This standard is meaningfully higher than reasonable suspicion, while still workable for officers in genuine emergencies. The court rejected Montana's reasonable suspicion framework as insufficient. It clarified that the emergency aid exception is its own doctrine separate from criminal investigation standards. The court also made clear that the presence of a firearm alone does not automatically justify warrantless entry. Every situation must be evaluated on its specific facts. The court handed lower courts a precise constitutional measuring stick. The fact that all 9 justices agreed without dissent sends a powerful message. This standard isn't open to reinterpretation or negotiation. Most significantly, the court rejected Montana's reasoning while still affirming the outcome. In other words, getting the right answer through the wrong legal framework isn't acceptable. The reasoning matters as much as the result. Every officer standing at someone's front door now operates under a standard unanimously validated by every justice on the nation's highest court. Do you believe the objectively reasonable belief standard gives law enforcement too much discretion? Or does it strike the right balance? Drop your answer in the comments below. Constitutional and legal implications. The emergency aid exception is now firmly established as its own doctrine with a single uniform standard every court must apply. Before this ruling, lower courts applied different frameworks, meaning a warrantless entry constitutional in one state could be illegal in another. That inconsistency is now gone. The objectively reasonable belief standard is now the law of the land. No state court, local policy, or officer interpretation can override it. This uniformity isn't a technical detail. It means your constitutional rights are the same regardless of where you live. The court reinforced this by refusing to allow the emergency aid exception to expand into a general public safety justification. This builds on the court's earlier ruling in Coniglia versus Strom, another unanimous decision that strengthened Fourth Amendment protections around the home. Together, These rulings send a clear message. Your home is not a place the government can enter based on vague suspicion. Practically speaking, Fourth Amendment protections have been clarified and strengthened. The constitutional wall around the American home is now stronger and clearer than before. Immediate policy changes. Law enforcement agencies must now train officers to apply the objectively reasonable belief standard specifically and consistently. Departments using the looser reasonable suspicion framework must update protocols and training programs immediately. This is not optional. Every training manual and field instruction referencing reasonable suspicion must be revised. Agencies failing to transition quickly expose themselves to serious legal liability. Every warrantless entry challenged under this new standard will test compliance. Departments that implement the change quickly will protect themselves legally and demonstrate commitment to constitutional rights. The ruling also sharpens the legal battlefield for criminal prosecutions. Defendants now have a clearer framework to challenge evidence. Prosecutors must demonstrate precisely what facts officers knew at the moment they entered the home. Documentation will now determine whether evidence is admitted or cases collapse. Impact on states and future cases. Every state court system is now bound by this ruling. State courts that previously relied on reasonable suspicion frameworks must adjust immediately. State legislatures must ensure their statutes align with this constitutional standard. The Cassis case highlights how critical documentation will become. Every officer making emergency entry must clearly articulate what objective facts they observed, what those facts indicated about danger inside, why those facts met the constitutional threshold. Legal experts largely welcomed the decision, citing the unanimous ruling as evidence the objectively reasonable belief standard reflects what the Fourth Amendment truly requires. However, this ruling does not end the legal debate. Future cases will test how this standard applies to new fact patterns. The doctrine will continue developing as courts encounter real-world emergencies that this ruling didn't specifically address. So, the final question is this: do you believe the officers were justified in entering that home, or should they have waited for a warrant? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this breakdown helped you understand one of the most important Fourth Amendment rulings in years, hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next update.